Do you feel safe to just be who you are? Do you feel secure enough to just express your natural self? The truth is that in some ways, yes, you do, and in other ways, no, you don't. We take this whole topic of being ourselves for granted. It seems very simple to just be yourself, but in actuality, there's all sorts of traumas and wounds and blocks and psychological, emotional, spiritual barriers to just being who you are. As simple as it actually sounds, there's so much conditioning that needs to be released and shed so that you can really just be who you naturally are. And like I said, we take this for granted. We kind of just assume like this is just who I am, and we kind of just live our lives in like an unconscious autopilot style fashion. We don't really look deeply into who and what we are at all kind of scales of our existence, right? We don't look deeply into our mind or our emotions or our true nature, etc. We don't do much investigating of our actual selves. So in this video, I'm basically going to give you a very solid guide to being your full self. And I'm going to really go relatively deep into it in this video. So we have to start off by talking about the identity, right? The identity that you believe you are. This is a massive thing that we take for granted, right? We believe that I am my self-concept, my name, my occupation, my relationship role, etc. We believe that these kind of just are us. We define all these things as us. When in actuality, there's a massive distinction between the self and the self-concept, our idea of who we are versus who and what we actually are. And in order to actually be yourself, you often have to let go of ideas of who you are. Not you often do, you do have to let go of ideas of who you are and move actually just into being you, which we'll discuss as we kind of go on. So the self-concept, or the ego, is this kind of false self that's basically built on various insecurities, anxieties, fears, all for the purpose of survival. And with this comes a lot of basically wounding and inauthentic behavior. This is something that we have to actually look at deeply if we want to truly be ourselves. So a person's identity is a mental construct. The self-image, right, the idea of who you are, of course, is just a thought. It's a mental construct that you create, and you don't really... You see, your experience kind of fools you because you believe it so deeply, and these patterns have been repeated and ingrained in you over and over and over again. You see, you don't really experience yourself to actually be who you are. You experience yourself to be your self-concept, right? Again, there's a massive difference between yourself and your self-concept. Your name, your age, your date of birth, your job, your body, even things like this. These are all included in the idea of who you are, not what you actually are. So, like I said, a person's identity is a mental construct, and it's formed in childhood. It's basically put together through various unconscious forces like early childhood relationships, early beliefs that you were exposed to, repressed emotions, psychological tendencies, emotional wounding, the pain of unmet needs, various patterns of various kinds. So we actually have to look into how to free ourselves from this in order to actually be our full selves, because our self-concept is an inherently limited sort of definition of who we are. It's confining. And if you want to be authentic, if you want to actually be yourself, you have to kind of go beyond that. You can't really remain stuck within those confines, because you're going to feel the consequences of that. It's going to be suffering. Number two, it's just simply not going to be your authentic self. So the way to return back to authenticity is presence, or being yourself. All right, let's kind of go into this. What do I mean here by being yourself? I mean learning to get out of your mind and its concepts of who you are and moving into your actual immediate experience through direct consciousness. This is something that you learn in meditation. You learn to just sit there and to be, to allow thoughts to arise and pass, emotions to arise and pass. You don't cling on to anything in your experience. You just allow your experience to be exactly as it is and to naturally move and flow. allowing things to spontaneously arise and pass, allowing thoughts to spontaneously arise and pass. You learn to basically just allow experience to be spontaneous, free, and not manipulated, because usually we're in this constant battle with experience. We're manipulating it, we're pushing things away, grabbing onto other things. The pleasurable stuff, I want that. The uncomfortable stuff, I want to throw that away. So we're learning to just allow our experience to be as it is. And this doesn't mean stasis, really. This means allowing the natural movement of life to just simply occur and allowing us to just surrender to that. This is the way back to being your full authentic self. This is the deconstruction of the separate self, of the ego, of all that conditioning that is basically creating this illusion of I am separate, I am located in the body, I am located in space, because ultimately your true nature is not located in a body or in space. This experience itself, right, is your true nature. Who and what you are is expressing itself as this experience, not in this experience. So you learn to bring presence into your experience, and ultimately you begin to recognize yourself as that pure, empty presence. You begin to recognize yourself as just pure consciousness, and this is a very healing thing. You recognize that pure consciousness is just allowing, right, the part of you that's just purely aware of experience is allowing experience to be as it is at all times. But there are certain forms of conditioning that your mind and body have that manipulate, that interfere, that do all this kind of stuff, that create all these illusions essentially for survival and manipulations and exploitation, things like this. And you learn to kind of just like ease off the gas pedal with those things by just applying presence to them, by understanding them, by applying mindfulness to them over time. And seeing, like really proving to yourself that I don't need to manipulate constantly in order to survive. I can actually just sit here, I can let go, and I can actually be safe. You're proving it to these deeply ingrained parts of you. Like you're really opening yourself up and learning to trust the natural movement of experience. Because right now, in this moment, I want you to find a part of you, an area of you that is shut down and closed. I want you to find an area that might be kind of tense, and you don't really feel connected to it. It might feel numb, it might feel dull, right? I'm sure you can find that. And then there's other areas you might feel more connected to. And we're essentially just bringing that presence to the entirety of our experience so that we connect with the raw immediacy that is occurring right now. Just the pure, I don't want to use the word now, it's too overused, but just the immediacy of the experience. And this is actually how you be yourself, because like I said, there's a massive difference between your self-concept, the idea of who you are, and your actual self. We need to differentiate these two, because your self-concept is just a construct. It's things that you have collected. It's actually your personal history, the wounds you have, the traumas you have, the beliefs you have, the emotions that you have, the conditioning that you picked up. It's all that kind of stuff. And your actual self is literally just pure presence. And as you bring presence right into your lived experience, a lot of that stuff that you picked up, it gets smoothened out. Right? The rough edges begin to kind of smoothen out. So all the things that were very inauthentic to you, you begin to immediately, I'm not going to say immediately recognize, but you begin to recognize them over time, right? You begin to recognize them and start to actually let them go. You feel safe to not do the conditioned behavior. You feel safe to not do the reaction. You feel safe to act upon your natural motivations as a human being. You feel safe to actually be who you are. So here, right, we're making a core distinction between concept and being ourselves. Concept is the self-concept, right, the idea of who we are. Being is being, right, in the immediacy of this experience, being the pure presence in this experience and allowing it to move as it naturally does. This is a very simple idea, but because it is like, it's throwing such a curveball in a lot of people's minds, it can be kind of confusing, right? Because we live most of our lives just kind of thinking, and it's very unconscious. We don't spend much of our time just sitting, feeling, seeing, hearing, right? Being in our senses, just connecting to the raw experience that we actually have. We spend most of our time just kind of living in these unconscious autopilot style behaviors and patterns without shining much attention on what's actually occurring in the moment, which is actually disconnecting us from our true self. And it's kind of putting us in this sort of like selfish, narcissistic, dysfunctional state, right? This unhealthy, selfish state. We're basically just very self-absorbed, and we're not really in tune with what's actually occurring, right? There's such a thing as a healthy selfishness. And then at a certain point of development, you need to kind of like transcend your self-concerns and your selfishness to, well, self-transcend. So that's it for this video. If you guys have enjoyed, remember to subscribe, leave a like, comment. Your most natural self is completely spontaneous and free from concept. It's free from mind, labels, constructions, things like this. If you want to actually be your full self, you need to actually break out of the habitual patterns of your mind and move into pure presence. That's where you're going to notice a very distinct shift in the energy in the moment, in the felt experience of who and what you are. And from there, very deep authenticity is recognized. It's just immediately known. It's like, oh, this is actually what I am. And this is like the natural way for me to express. This feels more like me. I feel fulfilled expressing myself. I feel fulfilled following my natural excitement. Take it easy.